anyhow, so my name is Doug Plum. I work at the CRC here locally in town. I live a few blocks from here. And here to talk about a few different things. Okay? Different Kashrus related things. I'm going to just start by mentioning something that's really not so much to do with my things that I have here. There's something to do with Kashrus that has to actually to do with the kitchen here even, and that is we have the kitchen here stays open, and that's only Rabbi KINS here, and he's in and out of the shul. It's always people here, but in a home, a person who wants to keep their home kosher and has people in their house that don't keep kosher. It was always a difficulty. How do you leave someone in your house that doesn't keep kosher? And I mentioned it, not really to talk about the issue itself, but nowadays there's a modern way of dealing with that issue. There's a modern solution that some people have done. I mentioned it just for the solution of it, which is nowadays it's easy to put up webcams in places, and done correctly, that takes the place of someone being in the house. So even if there's someone who's not Shem Shabbos in the house, who's going to be around, which raises very serious questions about running a kosher home when someone's there who doesn't keep kosher. Nowadays, it's so easy and it's so available for people to put up a camera in their house, and then there's someone who can keep an eye on it. Someone doesn't have to sit there and watch that camera all the time. Just that ability offers that choice. I'll just mention that. Okay. One of the things that we do in the kitchen when you do baking, it's a Kashrus challah. Okay? When you bake with enough flour, you need to do mafresh challah. And what most people are used to is they've been taught that if you use a certain amount of flour, then you mafresh challah, and if you use a more significant amount, then mafresh challah, you make the bracha at the same time. Okay? And I just wanted to give a demonstration of that as follows. Really the shear for Kashrus challah is not a shear in weight. Okay? Most of us, at least what I've always heard was 2.5 pounds, you make mafresh challah. For 5 pounds, you mafresh challah, you make a bracha also. Okay? And really the truth is that Kashrus challah is not something that goes by weight. Kashrus challah is a shear of volume. It's a certain amount of size. And therefore, what people have done is converted what we used to, converted the shear, which is really a volume shear, a certain amount of space that it takes up, a certain amount of cups of flour. It's really 10.5 cups of flour that you mafresh without a bracha. And converted it into weight because it's easier for many people to work like that. Okay? So if you took, I'm just trying to, these two cups have to hold the same amount. These two cups should hold the same amount of volume. The cups are the same. The blue cup, I just fill the flour. It holds 8 weight now, 20 grams. And this weighs 225 grams. Okay, so we're going to say that I needed 5 pounds. In flour, that's a fair assumption to 4 3/4. You could probably do, but you're already making a bracha. So that's fair to say 5 pounds of flour is a bracha. 2.5 pounds of flour without you do without a bracha. But that's only for flour. You use something else. In my house, they cook with oats and oat flour. The oat flour is more like regular flour, and oats is not as fine, and therefore it's fluffier. And so the same amount of flour, the same amount of it weighs considerably less. For oats, you use 3 pounds. 3.5 pounds, you're ready to make the bracha. Okay, that's one type of a thing. Okay, let's move on. You may have heard something, which is this. You may have heard from us at the CRC. Canned fruit is something that you could buy without a hashgacha. Assuming the ingredients are okay, you can buy canned fruit even if it doesn't have hashgacha. So they'll tell you, if you call the office, they'll tell you, read me the ingredients that are in there, and I'll tell you whether that if it's okay. This one has hashgacha on it. But I'll tell you that this one, if it does or doesn't have hashgacha, just in the ingredients. I think you can look at it. So this is just pineapple juice, and citric acid. And you call me up there and say you could use that without hashgacha. Okay, whereas if you're using for canned vegetables, canned vegetables, they say, no, canned vegetables need hafashach. Okay. What's the reason why canned fruits need hafashach? The canned vegetable, this is a canned mushroom. This is also mushrooms, water, salt, and citric acid. Same ingredients, just about. So there's nothing more significant about the ingredients in this one than the ingredients now. So what's the reason why this one needs hafashach and this one doesn't? Any guess? Any guess? Okay, that is correct. Well, the reason is because when you put, I'm having a hard time with this one. I'm sorry. I did a real job on this one. The reason is because the reason why the vegetables need a hafshah because where they're cooked, where they're processed in the factory. Okay? And that is as follows. When you put food into a can, what really goes on when you put food into a can is you do as follows. You put it into the can, it gets sealed. No microbes, nothing can get into there once it's sealed up. But the question is, well, what about what's in there already? Did something get in there already that would be dangerous and could be unhealthy? So it works as follows. They cook it, once it's in the can, it gets cooked to make sure that anything that's in there won't harm you. Anything dangerous that's in there won't harm you. So however it went in, it could have been as dangerous as possible. It was put into there, it was cooked, and you're safe. But then, what stops something from growing afterwards? The microbes become something called spores. They encapsulate themselves in a very hard shell, and cooking them is not going to kill them. The regular cooking is not going to kill them. So what's going to happen is, as soon as it cools down and things are good, the microbes will open up, come out of their shell, just open up their spores and start eating it again and making it dangerous. Okay? So the difference is like this. When something has a pH of 4.6 or lower, microbes won't function in that environment. So, had they come into that environment beforehand, that would be dangerous. But if it's below 4.6, if it's too acidic, that is not going to become, nothing can grow inside. So all you have to do is cook it enough to kill whatever was in there from beforehand, and you're safe. You don't have to worry. I'm not getting this over now. I'm doing a pretty awful job. If this is something that measures pH, we're hoping it's going to say what I hope it's supposed to say. We hope so. Okay, this is a pH of 3.4. Okay, so that is to say, once you cook this a minimal amount to kill anything that had already grown there from before, you don't have to worry about spores coming out of this because the spores won't function there. They won't come out until the situation, until the environment is good that they want to grow in that environment. Okay, they won't come out to this. Okay, now we follow into the environment. This is the pH of 5.6. Okay? So this pH is much higher. That state in here, it would grow. So what you have to do is in order to process that shouldn't spoil, you have to cook that much more seriously. Much more significant cooking goes into that. It takes more sophisticated equipment, and it takes much more serious licensing from the FDA. I believe it's FDA who oversees it. Then they take it much more seriously if you're processing foods like that than foods like this. So because of that, when a person has if you're in Hawaii and you're growing pineapples, you can own machinery that you can the pineapples. A few months a year you can pineapples, and the rest of the year you do nothing with it. The equipment is not very sophisticated. It doesn't need very big government oversight. You don't need any kind of expertise to run the machinery. You run the machinery, and when you don't need it, you turn it down. No big deal. It's not expensive equipment. If you have machinery that can can mushrooms in it, then that machinery is too expensive and too sophisticated to just let it sit idle. So if you grow mushrooms a certain part of the year, or one day a week you make mushrooms, you can't afford to have that machine just sit empty like that. So tomorrow you'll make canned corn, and then in the next season you'll make spaghetti and meatballs, and the next season you make cheese and ham. It doesn't make a difference. Whatever is available, lots of it. Once you have a machine that can process the mushrooms, you can do loads of things on it. And so first you have opportunity. Not only do you have opportunity, but you have the ability to do it. So you're going to take advantage of it. You have this big expensive equipment. It doesn't just sit like that waiting for nothing. So you're going to take advantage of it. And therefore, there's all kinds of trade foods that are made on that equipment. Okay? A factory I was at not so long ago, a factory that we give our stuff to, they make beans, and they also make meat with beans. That's because the same equipment could do both, because it's more flexible. On this kind of equipment, you couldn't possibly make anything other than vegetables. I'm sorry, other than fruits. Okay, now, so the rule really is not fruits or vegetables. That's not really what the rule is. The rule is more acidic and less acidic. Okay, and that's why a pineapple, if you remember in your brothels, pineapples are hadama. Okay, they're so to speak, a vegetable. But for these purposes, they're a fruit because they're very acidic. Okay, you know when you taste pineapple that has a more acidic taste to it. Pineapple, as the rule has that status. It's like a fruit. For these purposes, it's like a fruit, and it doesn't even have stuff. As long as the ingredients are okay.
So do all fruits have that status?
Mm-hmm.
All fruits you can?
So I mean pineapple,
That
peaches.
has a lower pH?
Right, that's good. The pH is more acidic. Peaches, pineapple, I don't know, well, think of the other ones that come like that. As long as the ingredients are okay. Sometimes the ingredients are more complicated, but as soon as the ingredients are pretty straightforward, which they often are, they're processed in facilities that are really low tech. They're really not very sophisticated. They do something. They do have to cook it, or else it would spoil. It would. If it was spoiled, it could be dangerous. But they're not very sophisticated. Okay, so that's the reason why they need it. It's not just a rule made out of no place that is like that. There's a basis to it. Now, it used to be, years ago, the world was not so sophisticated. And the people who made corn, that's all they did. They had equipment, and they did leave it idle. As we become more sophisticated, people became more cost conscious. They started saying, why should I leave this idle? And then they said, you know what? The guy who makes corn said, I don't need a machine altogether. A few months a year, I'll go ship it off to somebody to do my packaging for me, and he'll get somebody else who he does for everybody. So today I do corn, tomorrow peas, and the next day beef. Okay, so and then I can run to something fake. Okay, the fruit, these kind of fruit, there isn't trade in India. There isn't possible to hit trade. Okay, well, let's move on. Okay, anybody who runs the Kosher kitchen knows that when we crack eggs, we check the eggs for blood spots. Okay? We check them for blood spots. Okay? At home, that's what you would do the same. Brown eggs and white eggs. I have in front of me brown eggs, and the reason is because I want to show to you. I'm going to guess that we're going to find what I want here. I don't have X-ray vision. But brown eggs have in them spots that look very suspiciously like blood spots. Okay, and I just wanted to show you, I'm guessing we're going to find one in there, just to show you what they are, and just to explain to you how you should know that they're really not blood spots. Okay? Really what we're going to see here, we may hit a real one. Okay, but real blood spots are pretty uncommon in eggs. The eggs are handled, they're passed by a bright light, and they check them. So it's pretty uncommon to find a real blood spot. Of course, if you find them on occasion, it's pretty uncommon. But in brown eggs, I didn't crack it very well. I need a cartridge.
It's one of the reasons why I don't use brown eggs.
Because what? Because there's so many spots in it.
Yeah, first of all, they're more expensive, and then you just toss out capital and then.
So I can't tell you whether they're more expensive. That I can't help you with. But after this, hopefully, if we find what we need, you won't have to toss them out. I'm doing a horrible job. I'm sorry. Okay, here's one spot. This one has a small, blackish spot. Oops, it's over there. The white.
Okay, and that's fine?
I'm going to explain to you in a minute. Let's see if you depend on why it's okay. Or how I know it's okay. Let me say it that way. Got a little spot over there. So it's not terrible. So a spot over there. Much more spots. Ooh, look at this one. Very good. Okay. Here's a better example. This has got quite a number of spots in it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and what it is this? A blood spot comes from first blood vessels that get into the egg. And when you see them when you see a real blood spot, it looks like a blood spot. It's red. And it also tends to have a symmetrical shape to it. Like you would imagine if a drop of blood fell someplace, it would have a symmetrical. It looks like a long streak, but it looks like it could be a piece of blood. It would look like, imagine if a piece of blood fell in a certain direction, it would look like that. Okay. These are what we call protein spots. That is as follows. The white of the egg is made of protein. That's what it is. And there are parts of the protein that are more concentrated than others. This is true of white eggs or brown eggs. There are spots that are more concentrated than others. What happens is, in a brown egg, as the chicken is dyeing or giving off the coloring in pigment into the shell, some of that pigment leaks through the shell inside the egg, and it tends to concentrate on the places where there's a thickness to the egg. So that's why these spots are brown, not red. They're not brown, and they're not symmetrical. They tend to look like flakes of dandruff. They're just like, it's the way the protein took on, where the protein is thicker, there's an equal distribution of brown, but in the places where the protein is thicker, you see a darker brown. It looks like it tends to be toward a black or a dark brown color. It's not a blood spot. Okay? It's not blood. It's just protein, which is fine. I mean, you have the same spot, the same protein is in your white egg. It just doesn't look like anything. Maybe it looks like a little thicker white, but it doesn't catch your attention. And it's really fun. This is really fun. You could eat these if you want. If I just stuck my hands in front, if you want to eat them. But they're really fine. These are not blood spots at all. It's interesting. The hashkafas, sometimes on the package, sometimes they'll just tell you before them, will tell you that you should know that the things that are in there are not all blood spots. But just, you have to sort of have this, that's why I did it here in front of you. I can't do this in front of a crowd. I'm not a big crowd right now, but I can't do this in front of a crowd. You have to see the spot, and they don't look like blood. They don't look like blood. And once you understand, we work with companies that make brown eggs to understand what's going on, and this is the most common question that they get on their consumer hotline. That they get questions, oh my gosh, I opened the package, I found 4 blood spots and it doesn't. How can I buy this? This is like a very common question that they get, and this is their explanation. This is what's, so to speak, the science behind what's going on, why it's really not a concern.
Will these kinds of spots be bigger?
Mm-hmm.
They can be bigger.
It really depends on how the egg, how
As long as it's not red and symmetrical.
Right, red. When you look at it, you say, well, not so.
Like
blood spots are
clear,
symmetrical.
but it doesn't look
They
like
look
blood.
like they could be blood. I mean, if one of my kids has a bloody nose, the blood could streak, it could fall to a drop, but it's not going to be in a rectangle. Blood doesn't fall like that. It just doesn't work like that. It's a liquid. It doesn't work like that. Here, what's going on is that there's a piece of protein that formed in some odd shape, and then you just dyed it, and it ended up being brown. Right? So if it looks like this, you're okay. If it looks red and like reddish, it's so hard to find a blood spot in the white. That's why I couldn't bring one in. I had thought to bring a picture of one, just when you see them from today. When you see it, you say, that's blood. I get it. I understand that that's what it is. This, you look at it, you say, it just looks funny. I don't want to, so you're uncomfortable unless you would know what it is, and that's a...
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you check for blood spots, do you have to do it in a clear container, or can you do it in like a styrofoam cup?
Oh, well, it depends if you're a man or a lady. Okay. The men do it in clear containers because I can't see. So I look on the bottom, I look like this, and I don't know what I'm doing. The people who really work in the kitchen, I should say, people who work in the kitchen all the time, they do it without even, they just go like this. They don't even put them the two sides of it.
Right, no, because I've seen people just like
If you know what you're doing, if you could see, you could see. Go for it.
Okay.
I just can't see anything.
So
For
you
me,
know what you're looking for.
100%. The people, the chefs. You watch chefs. These are men actually. A lot of these are chefs. They sing crack eggs like this. They don't even, and they separate eggs like this. They just do it in one hand.
Right.
They're doing one on both sides. Yeah. So if you can do it, you can do it. I just can't physically. I can't get it done. So I do it in a clear bowl because for me that's easy. Okay. Now some eggs. These actually, if you look at these eggs, these haven't had extra on them, but these eggs here on them that they have extra omega-3. People have asked about that. Well, what does that mean? Did somebody add that in? Omega-3, if you buy it standard, it comes from fish.
Yeah,
It's complex animal. So people say, well, this one has a hefsher, so you're safe. But they say,
would have been a
well,
super sparta to make an almond?
well, that's the question. But what's going on and the answer is it has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't come from fish. No, nothing at all. The omega-3 is they feed the chickens, or they breed chickens that produce eggs with more of this omega-3 in it. Either from the feed, or from the breed, or it has something to do with the chicken. They didn't add anything into this egg. The egg, this is how it came out. It's a plain old natural egg. I mean, it's brown because of the certain breeds of chicken make brown eggs. But the omega-3 that's in there, no one added that on. It's part of what came into it. It's part of the chicken. And really eggs, as you might guess, eggs that come from kosher birds are kosher, and from not kosher birds are not kosher. Okay, so we eat. The Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to eat standard eggs you see in the street because they are assumed to come from chickens, and chickens are kosher. If you find an unusual egg, you're not allowed to eat it unless you knew it came from a kosher bird. A common example of that nowadays is quail eggs. There are many birds that are called quail. That name quail doesn't mean one specific thing. Some of them are kosher, but some of them are not. So quail eggs, you have to buy with the hefsher, and when the hefsherim call us and they say, someone asks us if we should certify quail egg, there's one person who really knows what he's talking about, so I send him to him. Because he could tell you, is the bird I'm looking at, is that the quail that's the kosher egg, or that's the one that we don't have any idea if it's kosher. Okay, so buying something like a quail egg is more difficult because you don't know you're getting a kosher egg. This, you know what it is, it's a chicken egg. Okay, so this is a kosher egg. Okay, the other kind of eggs you have, you know, is liquid eggs. Liquid eggs.
Like beers.
Like egg beaters, right, those egg attached. Now, people then ask, well, how do they make egg beaters? How do they check the egg beaters? Do they have Mashiach standing there? In our houses, we don't use eggs without checking them. So they have Mashiach standing there checking the eggs. Is that what he does? He spends all day? Now, there actually are people, they're just not Shem Shabbos. In an egg company, after the eggs pass over, they pass over bright lights that shine through, they can see blood spots in them, they knock them out. And then as they crack them in these liquid egg companies, there's actually a person sitting there watching them to see if there are blood spots in them. But that's of course not a Shem Shabbos. That's not someone who would trust them to check the eggs for us. So how do they do it? So the Shulchan Aruch says a very interesting thing. He says, nowadays, there are many reasons why you don't have to check eggs for blood spots. The minhag is that we check them anyhow. Even though you're not really required to, we check them anyhow. And of course, everybody does. But he says, during the daytime. You have to check them during the daytime. Now, what kind of strange thing is that? During the daytime we check them, and the nighttime we're like, what kind of strange thing? So the explanation is that, think of that living 100 years ago, by the daytime it's nice and bright, it's easy to check it. So if you'd be baking at night, there's not much light, and it was hard to check. So the Shulchan Aruch is saying is, that minute to check eggs is when it's reasonable. When it's too difficult, it's just a minute getting out. It's not, you're not really required to do it, it's only a minute. The minute doesn't apply when it's too difficult to do. And therefore, for him, too difficult meant at night. But for us, night doesn't mean anything. For us, it's not any more difficult to check it at night than by day. But for us, that means is to make liquid eggs. If you say to the liquid egg company, in order to make your eggs, you have to have a Mashiach standing there all the time. Well, that would be the end of liquid eggs. There wouldn't be any kosher eggs because who would pay for a guy to just stand there checking for blood spots? I mean, they pay somebody, but they're not paying the Mashiach to stand there. They pay whoever just to sit there. So because of that, it's as if it's at night. It's the same status of it being checked at night, that it's not a simple, easy thing to do, and therefore the minute doesn't require you to go that far to check it.
Once you find blood spots in an egg beater, you just don't.
Yeah, it's pretty uncommon. Because they really are checking for it. They can't do it.
Complaining.
Of course they get it. It's really pretty uncommon to find.
Yeah.
They can't do it, and then they have a human who's actually checking it. As it gets cracked open, they have a human who actually checks it. Okay. Okay. Fish. This one's kosher. Kosher fish. A very common question that people ask is, well, I saw this and this fish in the store, or I found it someplace, and this fish, is it a kosher fish or not? Okay, tell me is, I don't know, tilapia. Okay, well, you don't see it too often, but I see tilapia, is it a kosher fish? Just tell me. I saw blue marlin. Okay, I'm in the store and they're having a sale on blue marlin. The blue marlin kosher. Okay, tell me if blue marlin is kosher. So the answer to the question is like this. Depends who they get on the phone. If they get me on the phone, the answer to the question is, I'm not going to tell you. You see, why not? Do you know if it's kosher? Don't you know if it's kosher? Tell me it's kosher. Okay, what are you going to do with if I told you that it was kosher? What would you do now that I told you that it's kosher? What are you going to do? Are you researching fish? No. You're going to the fish store. You're about to go to the store. You want to know if it's kosher because if it's kosher, you're going to go buy some. Okay? So the thing is that there's only one way to know that a fish is kosher. It means is not a way to identify fish. People use the same name for many different fish in different places, and there's lots of fraud going on with fish also, but there's no way to really know what you're getting. And the only way to know whether a fish is kosher, I guess, this one was from Jewel, had no urine. Okay, so we were safe. But the real way to know it is it has scales. Okay, it has the fins and scales. You probably know what the Gemara says. Anyone who has scales has fins. So you really have to look for scales. Now, what the Rishonim say is that when we say scales, that doesn't mean any scales. Scales means the type of scales that when you pull them, you can get them off without ripping the skin. Okay, in other words, other fish have scales that are attached so well that in order to get them off, when you get them out, it rips the skin with it. But scales that are identified as kosher fish, those scales come off without ripping skin. Okay. So I asked them for a fish that had scales in it. You have gloves if you'd rather. If any. Okay, I just pulled this one out. Okay, if some of this top layer, that's the scale. Okay, but that scale didn't rip any skin with it. The skin is still whole underneath it. Curiosity, the scales are attached on the front and unattached on the back. Think about how the fish is swimming. If it was attached on the back, it wouldn't work very well. It's attached on the front, so you scrape it from the front, from the back. Here's another one. Sorry, everybody's courageous enough.
So, if you're at some kind of fish market that's out of state and whatever, who's going to let you do this?
So
who's going to let you touch
what
the
is
fish?
What is like this? When I look at this fish, I can guess that these are the kind of scales that will come off.
Yeah.
It looks like the scales of a kosher fish.
Yeah.
If I wanted a piece of fish, I would tell the person, I'm buying this. If you didn't scale it yet, usually when you go to the store, they're already scaled. But you say, I want a fish that's not scaled yet, and then I would do it afterwards, just to make myself confident that I'm getting really a kosher fish. Or, it's used also when, let's say, Hungarian is getting a delivery of fish. Their fish doesn't always come unscaled. Sometimes it comes as fillets. What they do is, and this is just the Jewish people, but it's all over the place, they do something called a skin patch. That is to say, on the end of the fillet, they leave a piece on that still has its scales on it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the store, the mashgiach, the Hungarian, is opening up the box, and he's making sure that they will have scales on it. If that's done, the industry does it. And the reason the industry does it is for kosher people. That way, when they get the fillet, it's just the fillet. It could be anything. It could be a catfish. You would never know. But the skin patch at the end is the way for the person to mashgiach to check that it's there. Yeah.
So technically, if you were out sick or something and there was a fillet of salmon, which doesn't have a texture, but they have that patch, could you buy it and then see if
Yeah,
it's there?
that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Now, salmon is unusual. Salmon wasn't the right example, and that's because salmon
You can't trick someone.
Salmon has a very unusual flesh color.
Right.
That there's only maybe 2 fish that are sold commercially. I don't know what else is in the sea,
Okay.
but 2 fish that are sold commercially that have that colored flesh, and they're both kosher. Okay. And what's unusual, the reason why they have such an unusual color, it's not like tigers are yellow and then we have polar bears that are white. It's not that it's just so to speak a coincidence. It's something very specific, then, which is everybody stores vitamin A in their body someplace. It's something you need to hold on to. And think of vitamin A, you think of carrots having a lot of vitamin A. Things with vitamin A have a yellowish or orangish color. And so every living thing stores their vitamin A in a different place. It tends to be a lot of stored in the fat of the body. That's why fat has a cream color to it, because it's the vitamin A that's stored in it. Certain animals store it in their flesh. And of the fish, salmon, and there's another type of a trout, which is a related fish, that's stored in their flesh. Other fish can't do that. You can't make them store their vitamin A in their flesh. You could feed them carrots all day long. They won't store it in the flesh. They make other parts of their vitamin A turn bright or orange, because that's what they're doing, but their flesh you can't do it. And because of that, you can identify salmon different than every other fish just by looking at its color.
So you wouldn't be able to buy without a hefster unless it had that scale test?
No,
Or you would still-
because you know that it's kosher fish. In fact, let's say it had a sears here. It had a puff here. Well, I know it's kosher. It doesn't have to have scales. I know it's kosher for some other way. Here, I'm knowing that it's kosher because that color of flesh only exists in salmon and this kind of trout, certain kind of trout that has it. So I'm okay. I know that that's the fish that I'm getting. I don't mean an orange, not even like a red color. The orange color, we're familiar with. We know what it's called. It's called salmon. That's the name of the color even. It's called that because that's an unusual color. Most fish don't look like the color like that. Okay. You might see once we're talking about salmon, there's salmon, a lot of it's called, it's colored, artificially colored. Okay? And what that means is not nearly as frightening as it sounds. What that means is like this. The salmon really live out in the ocean. They spawn in the seas, and they go back into the ocean. They have a whole life cycle out in the ocean. Came along some people and they realized we don't need to go fishing out in the middle of the Pacific in Alaska to find our salmon. They built a huge swimming pool, okay, and they started raising salmon by themselves. It's called farmed salmon, and it's farmed everything else. Farmed all kinds of fish. This is going to sound exciting, but I once traveled to China for Kashrus reasons, and as you drive along on the roads, I said to them, what's going on here? What do I see as we drive along the roads? These big, I don't know what, like little lakes, but they look too neat and organized to be lakes. And what it is those are farms for raising salmon, fish, not necessarily whatever kind of fish they want to. And it's very simple. You raise the fish in this little swimming pool, it's a pretty big swimming pool, but when you finish, you just catch them. There's no place for them to hide. That's your fish. And then you take them out and put another batch in. So people started raising salmon like that. So there was a competition now between the farm-raised salmon and the wild salmon. Okay? So the wild salmon companies convinced the government that anybody who raised, I've got one more part. The people who have farmed salmon, those salmon don't eat enough things that contain vitamin A to have the flesh color. So they come out looking white. So how do they get their fish to look good? They didn't eat enough vitamin A to be the right color. So they feed them something, they add to their feed something that has the vitamin A to give them that color. If they do that, you want to give them the right color. So they got the government to say that if you do that, you have to mark your fish as being artificially colored. Because you artificially fed it something that gave it that color. Okay. But they didn't paint it. It's not like they squirted dyes into it. They just fed it something else that they fed it vitamin A that caused it to have that color to it. Okay. I can't even pronounce it. It's a really long word what they feed it. That's the accent. I can't pronounce it. A long word. It's vitamin A. So that it's not colored in the sense of maybe it's a trace color was added into it. It's just a feed that was given to the fish that caused them to, with time, develop that color. Just like these fish. These fish ate something else. They ate krill. They gave them that color. And these fish ate a pill and did the same fish. Okay? Okay. Moving on to time actually. Okay. We should be able to get through everything. Let's see what we can do. Okay. Okay. This is a Kashrus question. Okay. The thing is, when you want to, let me change slide. When you want to kasher something, you kasher something relative to the way it's used. Okay. The most common way we kasher things is by putting it in boiling water, and that is because anything that became treifed using hot water or liquid gets kashered with liquid also. If you cook something on the fire with no liquid, then it needs to be boiled. Okay? It needs to be put under a torch until it turns red hot, which is basically impossible. Okay? For most people, that's impossible. When a pizza shop switches over from treif to kosher, their pizza shop, the oven has to be kosher with liquid because they put treif pizzas right onto the oven. There's no liquid, they just put the pizzas right in the oven. So that has to be done, but you couldn't do this at home. This is not an easy thing to do. It's a very complicated thing to do. So for the pizza shop, if you go kosher, they do it. But in your house, if you have a pot and they said it needs liquid, they would just say forget it, throw it out. Okay? So there's two reasons things can be. One is because you cook right on the fire, and one is because it's made of certain materials, Kashrus materials. Okay? Those are hopeless. Okay? But when you have, and the most common case when you cook something straight on the fire is frying pan. And when you cook with a frying pan, it's possible that you cooked it with you put the food right onto the pan, and in this case, this is a fleshig pan. We're on the milk side of the pan. This is a fleshig pan. So if you were to put something milk into this, pancakes in here that had milk in them, okay, so you just trace up your pot. So I want to kasher my pot. I have a tray pot. Do I need libun? No, let's throw it out. Or do I need hagala and I can kasher it? Okay, now, the case that I gave you is not a perfect case for reasons that I don't need to explain now, too complicated. But let's just take that case, okay? So we have something we just put some milk in. So it depends as follows. It depends how much liquid you put into your pan. It depends what you do with your pan, whether it's considered with liquid or not. Think about it like this. Let's say you make French fries in here. You make deep-fried French fries in here. Okay? So if you put in an inch of oil into this, that's with liquid. You wouldn't need leaving from that. That's being done with lots of liquid in it. Well, so what happens when pancakes, people make pancakes with an inch of oil. But how much oil it is? Okay? And the difference is, it depends how you use your oil. Okay? If you use pan, okay? If you spray your pan like that, okay? That's so little liquid that you have to dilute it. If that's how you cook, let's say you had a Teflon pan, you put nothing onto it. Or you had a pan like this and you just put on just a coating. The way it says in Preston, they take a stick of butter. When the pan was hot, they just rub it across. So think about how much you use. Just a little greasing of the pan, but essentially nothing is on the pan.
That's considered dry.
That's considered dry. If you cook it right in the pan, you have to leave it for that. Okay? If you cook it with real oil, with a more significant amount of oil, you put on oil more seriously, like in the commercial kitchen where they cook. I don't know how you cook in your house. But they put in a more significant amount of oil, then that's considered with cooking in water, and you just have to hook up.
What if you do both ways? Not at the same time, but...
No, well, hopefully you only trained it up once. Right? The question is when you when you messed it up. It's always been a flake pot. So it's a flake pot. And now by mistake you once put in milk into this. So now how did you do it when you cooked it like that? Did you put it just a spray? You just put in a tiny bit? You put a stick of margarine, a drop of margarine into it?
You could like pour in cream.
Right. It depends how you did it. Will depend on how you're going to have to cash it. Okay, that's what it depends on. Okay. Okay. For this. Okay. Here's another food. Couscous. I don't know if you ever eat this in your house. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Every night.
Every night?
Every night.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you started?
No, I just got married. And so, couscous, thank you. It takes 5 minutes to make.
Very good. You're going to find out why now. Okay.
Kid line very quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever works. Okay. Okay, so so you know, maybe you were expecting a more simple Kashrus practice.
No, I wanted something like that.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
So the lady was here before and she was finished. She's been
They want to do something more.
Okay, so things like this. Most items that are simple, the simpler the item is, the less it needs hashgacha. Okay? The less chance that it needs hashgacha. Something that's more processed and more complicated runs into concerns of ingredients and trade equipment, and in short, that's what you're looking for. Okay? So, pasta, plain pasta, without anything. I'm not thinking like spinach pasta. Just plain old pasta doesn't need hashgacha. It's just flour and water. Put it made into a shape and dry it out, and it's fine. It doesn't need hashgacha. That doesn't apply to the pre-cooked pastas, but the regular pasta, the regular everyday elbows and all that stuff doesn't need hashgacha. Now, almost all of it does, and it sort of goes together. What happens is when the Kashrus or something is really very easy, then those companies are encouraged to get a hashgacha. Because when they call up the rabbi and say, "Rabbi, what does it take to become kosher?" The guy says, "It's easy. It's going to be an easy job." So they more likely to do it than the guy making hamburgers and says, "What does it take to become kosher?" And they say, "Forget it." If he hears the rabbi says, "It's hopeless. I'm never going to become kosher." But I say, "I'm making spaghetti." So spaghetti companies, it's easy to become kosher. As soon as they call up, they find out it's easy to do it. Okay, so that's for spaghetti. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, that's for spaghetti. So now, rice, same thing. I'm not talking about. No, I shouldn't put rice. I should put this right. Okay. I'm not talking about instant rice. I'm talking about rice, the standard rice that you have. Those rices are maybe cooked and dropped. There's almost nothing on it. Couscous is an exception to that. Okay. What is couscous? Okay. Couscous is they take whole grains of wheat. Whole grains of wheat, and they rub them. They scrape them until they get to a certain shape. The larger pieces are whole. It's the grains shaped into a ball. Okay, and these are the shavings that came off when they did that. Okay, these are the other pieces that fell off. So it's whole pieces of wheat. So we say, well, whole pieces of wheat, what could be wrong with a whole piece of wheat? It's just a piece of wheat that was filed down to a certain shape. The pasta is even more than that. The pasta was turned into flour. But what could be wrong with that? And the answer is that couscous is actually cooked. It's 100% cooked in the factory. And it raises the question of pishlaka. there's shalakim is that certain foods a yid has to participate in the cooking, and there are different rules. But one of the things is that it has to be cooked. Okay? One of the rules is that it has to be fully cooked, and couscous is fully cooked. Now, when you take, if you take couscous out of a package like this, if you put this into your mouth, you would think that the stuff is not edible. Okay? But really, what it is, really what it is that they fully cooked it and then dried it out enough that it doesn't spoil and it stays okay. But the word here, actually, but the truth is that if you take it like this, I should have started this a minute before. If you take it and put it into hot water, you put it into hot water and let it sit here for a few minutes, it'll be perfectly fine. It doesn't need cooking. It really needs to be warmed up and it needs to be hydrated. It's dry, so it needs a little moisture into it, and it needs heat because most people only eat cold food. But besides that, it's fully cooked. It's up to 100% edible. Okay? So you cook it for 5 minutes because you want to make it warm, and you may add other things into it also.
Yeah.
You may, while you're doing it, fried onions or whatever you did to it to make it a little more tasty, but really you're dealing with something that's really fully cooked already. And because it's fully cooked, it needs hashgacha, not because of the ingredients. There are no ingredients to it. It's just meat. But to make sure that it's fishery strong. You want to make sure that the yid was involved in it. Well, there are other ways that it could be mutter, depending on how they cook it. But someone has to pay attention to it. Someone has to be thinking about the fishery Yisrael. So you only want to eat it with hashgacha, not because of ingredients really, but because you want to make sure that fishery Yisrael was thought about. And someone made sure that it was a. It's also good for mashgichim because like if you eat on the road. You take overnight in no place, you can have hot supper. What?
It's true.
Because it's... Okay, well, that's what I usually do something. Just take it with me in the bag, and there's always hot water in the hotel, and that'll be ready in a minute. Give it a second. Okay. We're winding down here. When you, there's a din that in order for if you have something to trim, something to place you, if you want the flavor from that to transfer to something else, typically that happens with heat. It's a simple bit that transfers with heat. And it has to be some connection between the coast and the trade. Okay, the locals inflation has to be somehow connected in order for the time to transfer from one to the other. Okay? So there's one way of time transferring that people don't always think of. With liquids?
Yeah.
What?
No, isn't it if it's what?
There has to be a liquid double change. Well, they touch. The two foods touch each other and transfer. But they have to be near each other. Or say two things that are not close or not touching wouldn't pass. And what something people don't think of is something that's called sand. Okay? Say this is it. You have steeper is rising up to something. So that causes time for transfer. The case in the Shulchan Aruch is person has milk tzaddik and milk pot had salami hanging above the drying over the oven. So the milk, if this is a milk pot, then the vapors that have to do with milk in here or milk pot, these vapors are considered to be milk. So if this vapor is the salami that's hanging over here, then it depends on how. Depends if the spot where it hits, it's still yatsa that's what. So the point, the yatsa where your hand would pull back. It's so hot that your hand would pull back. If it's yatsa at this point, it causes complications. If it's not yatsa where it hits, it doesn't cause complications. Okay? So most people nowadays would never put a salami hanging over the pots. Okay? It wouldn't even occur to us that this is food. Just about that. So most people would never occur to them to do that. Okay? But there's something that we do that's very similar to that, which is if this was a soup, if this was a soup, okay, and I wanted to spice the soup, okay, so I would pour spices over it, or pour salt into it right on top. So what happens is, you can cover it for it depends how high you put it. If I put the spices from up here, it's not hot over here. It makes it warm, but it's not hot over here. That's okay. If I put the spices from closer by, then what I'm doing is, if that's a little hot and this is a inflation, I'm making this trick. Or I'm making inflation.
But as long as there's no vapor.
Well, right, there is vapor here.
I know, but if there wasn't, it's fine
then you're okay.
directly in.
Right, let's say, for example, when you put in the chocolate, Okay, you put it in the trunk, and everything is being thrown to the fire. It's not hot yet. There's no vapors, there's not anything coming up yet. That's okay. You can put the spices in. But if you come on later, this is already happened. Here, it's ready to cook. Here, you're okay. This spot over here, this is like borderline as becoming gas levels over here. If you get a little higher, this is just warm over here. Once you get to a spot that's hot,
Then you need to set the spice.
put into a disposable cup. Okay, we put the spices into a paper cup or into a plastic cup. So then from a plastic cup, that's okay. You don't get the plastic cup or plastic or the other way around.
But let's say you do salt, so put it on like raw meat, and then the next day you put salt on top of like the big one cream cheese. That's fine.
That's okay, because everything's cultivated, there's no vapors going on, and you're okay over there.
Okay, great.
Right, that's okay. It's actually, in the Shulchan Aruch it says that a person should have separate sauce for milk and salvation.
Okay.
But the reason for that is, it has to do with the way they use salt. We actually just got this in my house, but it used to be very common. Instead of a salt shaker, you have like a salt dish. A little dish, you dip your things into it. So then, today I stuck in a piece of meat. And tomorrow I stuck in something else. So then, because you worry about food being left behind in there. Okay, but on this salt shaker, there's nothing left behind in there. I just shake it over my food. So if I'm shaking it over something cold, I can just put it over this. There's no waste from it. So understand. Sorry, Joe. No, it's not. It's a little water, but it's water. It's a little close to it. But it's 100%. The food it's cold because it really is cold. It comes from the factory. From these kind of factories, the employees eat once off the line because they cook the stuff up and it's perfectly good. It's not tasting great. They have a salt shaker and everything. Okay. The same also applies. This idea of Zay has two other applications to it. And that is, one is for people who have a double oven, stacked one on top of the other. So by and large, the walls, the floor of one oven is not the roof of the other oven. It's usually two different layers, and there's no problem there. But what can be a concern is the way the vapors exhaust out of the back of it. That sometimes they share an exhaust. We once went to a catering facility where they had a milk side and a pleasure side. And in between the two sides, in between the two sides of the kitchen, there was a steamer. And they told us, I don't remember which way it was, the top one is milk and the bottom one is pleasure, so the other way around. Okay? There were two steamers right in they like little ovens for steaming vegetables. And what we did is we had them turn on one of the steamers. And one of the steamers was on, and the other one was off. And with the one on, the vapors were pouring into the other one. Because it had the same exhaust out the back. So the vapor was pushing into the bottom one and out the top one, into the other oven. If I was in vegetables, okay, but if I was cooking meat on the bottom and there was cheese on the top, it would be pouring inflation. This is inflation top. This is not the top pouring inflation oven. You trade with your food over there. Okay, so if you have a double oven, the oven itself, you can have one for milk and one for inflation. If someone can check that you're not sharing an exhaust. Okay? That's something that a farmer could check, or someone with scan or someone who could look at the plans. In the plans of how the oven is made, you could check it. Or really what most people do is most ovens nowadays have a Shabbos mode. The Shabbos mode almost always is from the start date. You can call them up and take them. I want to buy this and this model oven, or I'm moving to a house with this and this model oven. Can you tell me if the two sides share the same exhaust? No, they should usually, if they work with the manufacturer, it's something that they're conscious of, they're aware that there could be this problem. They can usually answer the question. Okay, if you can't figure it out yourself, they can usually answer. Okay, and one last part of that is, the other place where we think about saying it is in the microwave. In a microwave, if I heat up a bowl of soup, milk and soup in there, so of course, if soup spills, then the tray is being trayed because it's spilled, the milk is spilled all over the place. But even without that, the ceiling of the microwave, and even the window of the walls, is becoming milked as my cup of soup, my bowl of soup is cooking. There are vapors spreading all over the place. Those are all milk vapors. Tomorrow, when I heat up something with inflation soup, I put up some chicken soup in there, the same thing's going to happen with the tray. Okay, so with inflation, I just made my microwave tray. That's why a microwave is. really best if you have a choice. You have to microwave. If you have room in your kitchen, you have to microwave. They're not terribly expensive. Or you always cover it. If you say, this is doing a milk microwave, I treat the microwave as a milk. When I get places, I always wrap it, so therefore there's no transfers. The only way the transfer can happen is through Zeta. If I cover it, I don't mean seal it perfectly, that not looking at it. Reasonably cover it, then nothing's going to come, then no transfers can happen because it's concealed. Okay? I don't remember why that's by. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one question?